The morning of the 5th anniversary felt heavier than the previous 4. I stood at the kitchen window, watching dust float in the sunlight like tiny ghosts. Everything in this house still carried Kwame's scent. Old books, pipe tobacco, and the faint trace of hospital disinfectant that never quite left my memory.
The doorbell rang at exactly 10. Jabari and Niara entered with the same practiced sorrow they wore every year. "Mama," Jabari said, pulling me into a stiff hug. His cologne was too strong, as always. Niara gave her usual silent nod, eyes already scanning the room for anything of value. They sat in the living room. Jabari, as usual, took his father's armchair. Within 10 minutes, the real conversation began. Another failed shipment, creditors calling, a temporary loan of $80,000 needed by tomorrow. "I'll think about it," I said quietly. Jabari's face tightened, but then his expression softened. He looked toward the old family photo on the wall. They sat in the living room. Jabari, as usual, took his father's armchair. Within 10 minutes, the real conversation began. Another failed shipment, creditors calling, a temporary loan of $80,000 needed by tomorrow. "I'll think about it," I said quietly. Jabari's face tightened, but then his expression softened. He looked toward the old family photo on the wall. As soon as their car left, I changed into a simple black dress, picked up a small bouquet of white lilies, and slipped out the back door. I called a taxi from the next street. My heart beat with a strange mix of grief and longing. I just wanted to see my son sitting at his father's grave, head bowed, speaking from the heart. Even for 1 minute, I wanted to believe I had raised a good man. Pine Ridge Cemetery was quiet under the gray sky. Old oaks whispered in the wind. I walked the familiar path toward the Johnson family plot when Ephraim, the old groundskeeper, stepped out from behind a stone angel. "Mrs. Johnson," he said urgently, voice low. "Don't go to the grave, not yet." I stopped. "My son is there." "I know," Ephraim cut me off. His weathered face looked troubled. "That's why you need to see this first. Come with me, quietly." He led me along a narrow side path to a small rise hidden by thick bushes. From there, the family mausoleum was clearly visible, yet we remained concealed. My hands turned cold around the lily stems. Less than 10 minutes later, Jabari and Niara appeared. They carried no flowers. Jabari took out a key and unlocked the heavy iron door. They stepped inside as casually as entering a storage room. My stomach twisted. Ephraim touched my arm gently. "Stay here. Watch." Another 10 minutes passed. Then, a white van with tinted windows drove up the service road. 2 men in dark clothes got out, carrying a folded stretcher and tools. They entered the mausoleum. I couldn't breathe. When they came out, the stretcher was no longer empty. A black body bag lay on it. Long, heavy, unmistakably human. Jabari and one of the men carried it into the van. Niara followed with a small leather bag that looked familiar. Kwame's old medical records folder. The van drove away. Jabari locked the mausoleum again. They left without saying a prayer or leaving a single flower. I stood frozen. Ephraim spoke softly beside me. 2 years ago, your son paid me and another worker to look the other way. The casket inside has been empty ever since. I'm sorry, ma'am. I should have told you earlier, but I was scared. And there's more. He led me down to the mausoleum after making sure they were gone. My hands shook as I turned the key. The heavy door groaned open. Inside, the marble casket stood open, empty.
Only a thin layer of dust and a faint smell of chemicals remained. But that wasn't the worst part. Ephraim pulled out his phone and showed me a video he had secretly recorded months ago. In it, Jabari was speaking to a doctor in this very room. As long as the machines keep him alive in the facility, the trust fund remains under my control. The moment he dies officially, the property division changes. Keep him breathing. That's all I need. The world tilted. Kwame, my husband, was not dead. He had suffered a severe stroke 5 years ago. The doctors had said he wouldn't wake up. I had trusted Jabari to handle the hospital paperwork while I drowned in grief. He had declared Kwame dead, held a funeral with an empty casket, and moved his father to a private facility under a false name, where he remained in a coma, kept alive only for the money. All these years I had been mourning a man who was still breathing somewhere. The cold that entered me then was deeper than grief. It was clarity. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my old writing desk, the one I hadn't touched in decades, and opened the bottom drawer. Inside were my nursing license